Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
When I asked Claire to marry me, I thought I was stepping into the happiest chapter of my life. We'd been together for 3 years, and though things weren't always perfect, I believed in us. She was funny, charming, beautiful, and for the most part we worked. Sure, her family was different, but whose isn't? I grew up in a middle-class home where you worked for what you had. My parents instilled in me a sense of responsibility, especially after my dad passed away young. That loss shaped me. I worked hard, built a decent career, invested smartly, and by 31, I had more than most of my peers a stable job, a modest but growing savings account, and the house my dad left me. Claire came from a very different background. Her parents were kind enough, but they coddled her younger brother Mason to no end. Mason was 25, unemployed more often than not, constantly bouncing between business ideas that never lasted more than a few months. He was the type who always had a new scheme but never followed through. Claire admitted he was a little lost, but she defended him fiercely. I thought it was just sibling loyalty. I never imagined how far that loyalty would go. After our engagement, we started wedding planning. Venues, guest lists, budgets. It was overwhelming, but exciting. Then one evening, Claire brought up something that made my stomach twist. We were sitting on the couch, scrolling through Pinterest boards, when she suddenly closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. "There's something important we need to talk about," she said. "Okay," I replied, thinking she was about to mention the honeymoon. "It's about your will." I blinked. "My will? What about it?" "Well," she said slowly, choosing her words like stepping stones, "I think it would make sense to update it before the wedding, just in case, something happens." I nodded cautiously. "That's fair. If we're married, I'd want you taken care of. That makes sense." She hesitated. Then her next words came out in a rush. "And I think you should add Mason too." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I laughed nervously. "Wait, what?" She crossed her arms defensively. "I'm serious. Mason doesn't have much, and it would mean a lot to my family if you included him. Just a portion. It doesn't have to be big." My heart pounded. "Claire, are you asking me to put your brother in my will before we're even married?" "It's not unreasonable," she argued. "You have assets, your house, your savings. If something happened to you, it would be unfair for Mason to be left with nothing. You know how much he's struggled." I felt heat rising in my chest. "He's struggled because he doesn't work, Claire. He's not my responsibility. Why would I leave part of my estate to your brother? He's not my child. He's not even family yet." Her face hardened. "Because he's important to me. And if you care about me, you should care about him too." That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I loved Claire, but this wasn't a small request. This was her testing whether I was willing to be manipulated before the wedding had even happened. And deep down, I knew this wasn't about just in case. This was about money, about control, about Mason. The next morning, I looked at her differently. For the first time since we'd started dating, I wasn't sure if the woman I'd proposed to was the woman I could trust with my future. The morning after Claire dropped the "add Mason to your will" bomb, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I sat across from her at breakfast, watching her butter her toast like nothing had happened, while I was still reeling from the conversation. Finally, I broke the silence. "Claire, about what you said last night, were you serious?" She didn't even look up. "Of course I was. Why would I joke about something like that?" I put my coffee down, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do you hear how insane that sounds? You're asking me before we're even married to leave part of my estate to your brother, a brother who doesn't work, doesn't pay bills, and hasn't lifted a finger to support himself." She rolled her eyes. "You make it sound so harsh. Mason's just had bad luck, that's all. He's been trying." "Trying?" I snapped, my patience thinning. "Trying doesn't pay rent. Trying doesn't build a future. And even if he was a model citizen, he still wouldn't be entitled to my money. He's not my family, Claire. He's yours." Her jaw tightened. If you really loved me, you'd understand. Mason is part of me. Taking care of him is taking care of me. I stared at her, my heart sinking. No, taking care of you is my responsibility if we get married. Taking care of your grown brother isn't. The argument spiraled from there. For the next week, every conversation circled back to Mason and the will. I'd come home from work and find her scrolling articles about estate planning. She'd send me texts with links about how to avoid disputes, as if I just needed education. It wasn't about educating me, it was about wearing me down. Then her parents got involved. One Sunday, she invited me to dinner at her parents' house. I thought it was just a normal family meal, but halfway through, her dad cleared his throat, setting his fork down with exaggerated care. "Son," he began, "Claire tells us you're being resistant about some future planning." I felt my stomach twist. "If you're talking about the will, yeah, because it's ridiculous." Her mom chimed in, her voice syrupy but sharp underneath. "It's not ridiculous. Mason's had a hard time. If you're going to be part of this family, we expect you to think of him too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just Claire, it was the entire family trying to corner me. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You all expect me, before I even marry your daughter, to sign legal documents guaranteeing money to your son if I die. Do you hear yourselves?" Her dad's face hardened. "It's about security, about showing commitment. If you can't do that, maybe you're not ready for marriage." That word commitment hit me like a slap. My dad used to say, commitment is a two-way street. If someone makes it one-sided, run. And sitting there, with 3 pairs of eyes pressuring me into signing away part of my future, I realized this wasn't commitment. This was control. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood. "I'm not signing anything. Not now, not ever. If that's a deal-breaker, then maybe this engagement was a mistake." Claire's mom gasped. Claire went pale, then red, then pale again. "You can't mean that," she whispered. But I did. Driving home that night, the silence in the car was suffocating. Claire stared out the window, her arms crossed. Finally, she said, "If you don't add Mason, I don't see how we can move forward." There it was, the ultimatum, and deep down, I already knew what my answer would be. A few days after Claire's ultimatum, Mason decided to pay me a visit. No warning, no text, just showed up at my house like it was his. He wandered through my living room, hands in his hoodie pockets, eyes darting across my shelves like he was tallying what might someday be his. "Nice place," he said casually. "Claire tells me you've built up some equity here. That's solid, man. Real solid." I clenched my jaw. "What do you want, Mason?" He smirked. "Relax. I just think we can work something out. You don't even have to give me much in the will, 5-10% tops. It's not like you'd even miss it, and it would prove to Claire you're serious about the family." I stared at him. "You're asking me to bribe you into approving my marriage." "Bribe? Nah, man. It's an investment in keeping the peace." I pointed at the door. "Get out." His smirk faltered, but he shuffled off, muttering, "Don't say I didn't give you a chance to make this easy." That night, Claire pretended like nothing had happened. When I told her Mason had stopped by, she just shrugged. "He's protective. Maybe if you gave a little, things wouldn't feel so tense." A little. That word hit me hard, because I knew what a little meant in her family. It meant the first step in a never-ending staircase of demands. The final straw came a week later when Claire tricked me into meeting with an estate attorney. I thought we were going to talk wedding logistics, but instead, I was ushered into a sleek office where a young associate handed me a draft concept plan. Right there on the page, in black and white, Claire, 60% beneficiary. Mason, 20% beneficiary. Remaining estate. Charitable remainder. I slid the folder back without even finishing. This isn't a concept. This is theft dressed up in legal language. Claire's cheeks burned red. "We're just exploring options." "No," I said firmly. You're testing how far you can push me." The car ride home was silent, but her eyes told me everything. This wasn't about love. It was about leverage. And Mason wasn't just her brother anymore. He was a third person in our relationship, pulling strings I never agreed to. That was the night I realized I wasn't fighting for a marriage. I was fighting against an entire family's entitlement. And if I stayed, I'd lose. Sunday afternoon, I drove to Claire's parents' house with a knot in my stomach so tight it felt like it was strangling me from the inside. The PDF her mom had sent, Proposed Path to Reconciliation, was still fresh in my mind. I already knew what kind of mediation this was going to be. Not a conversation, but an ambush. When I walked in, the whole family was already seated in the living room. Claire sat stiffly on the couch, her arms folded across her chest. Her mom was perched on the armrest, like a referee who had already picked a side. Her dad leaned back in his chair, hands steepled, and Mason sprawled out like he owned the place, sipping a soda and smirking. "Glad you came," Claire's dad said, like he was welcoming me to a board meeting. "We want to clear the air and find a way forward." I sat down across from them, steadying my breath. "All right, let's hear it." Claire's mom started. "We love you, and we want what's best for Claire, but marriage isn't just about two people. It's about families coming together. Mason is part of this family, and therefore part of yours." I cut her off gently. "With respect, marriage is between me and Claire. Not me, Claire, and Mason. Not me and your entire family. Just us." Her dad's jaw tightened. "You're being short-sighted. Mason is young, he's figuring things out. A safety net would allow him to thrive." I laughed bitterly. "A safety net? He's 30 and still bouncing from one business idea to the next. He doesn't need a safety net. He needs accountability." Mason leaned forward, smirk widening. "You sound jealous, man. Scared I'll do better than you if I just get one shot." I turned to him, my voice flat. "I'm not jealous. I'm disgusted. You walked into my house, pitched me a pyramid scheme, and expected me to bankroll you. Now you want to live off my death. That's not ambition, Mason. That's parasitism." The room went dead silent. Claire's mom gasped. Her dad's face turned beet red. Mason sat up straight, his smirk faltering for the first time. Claire finally spoke, her voice sharp. "Stop attacking him. This isn't about Mason being perfect. It's about compromise. If you really loved me, you'd prove it by making this small gesture. 5% of your estate. That's all we're asking." I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. "Claire, you're not asking me for 5%. You're asking me to give up my boundaries. Today, it's 5% in a will. Tomorrow, it's moving Mason into our home. Next year, it's funding his business. Where does it end?" Her eyes filled with tears. "It ends when you show me you're not selfish, when you prove that you're willing to put family before money." That word, again, selfish. It hit me like a hammer, the same way it always had when people wanted to make me feel guilty for saying no. I remembered the long nights after my father died, me holding down 2 jobs to keep the lights on in our house while other people my age partied. I wasn't selfish then. I wasn't selfish now. I stood up. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "You keep saying family, but what you mean is control. You don't want a husband. You want a provider for you, for Mason, for anyone else who can't carry their own weight. I'm not signing up for that." Claire's face crumpled. "So that's it? You're walking away?" I looked around the room, her parents glaring, Mason sulking, Claire staring at me with a mix of anger and desperation. And I realized this wasn't love anymore. It was a negotiation I was never meant to win. "Yes," I said finally. "That's it." I walked out, leaving the folder of proposals on their coffee table. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my steps were steady. When I got in my car, I half expected Claire to come running out, to call my name, to fight for us. But she didn't. She stayed inside with her family, and the silence told me everything I needed to know. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. I'd lost the woman I thought I loved, but I had gained something more important: clarity. And as painful as it was, Clarity was better than walking blind into a marriage built on manipulation. The morning after that mediation, I woke up to silence. No texts, no missed calls, no apology from Claire. The engagement ring I'd given her was still in her possession, and part of me thought she'd at least reach out to return it, to talk, to fight for us. But nothing came. By noon, I got my answer not from Claire, but from Facebook. Her profile photo had changed. The engagement status was gone. And there, in her new post, was a picture of her and Mason at brunch, with the caption, "Family is everything. The ones who stand by you no matter what." It hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because I still wanted her back, but because it was so clear now her loyalty had never been to me. It had always been to her family. To Mason. That afternoon I drove to her apartment. She opened the door, eyes red but chin lifted like she'd rehearsed her role in a play. "We need to talk," I said. She crossed her arms. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." "No, Claire," I said firmly. "You made the choice when you put Mason before us. I asked for a marriage built on trust and respect. You asked for my will, my money, and my surrender. That's not love. That's extortion dressed up as loyalty." Her lip trembled, but she didn't argue. I pulled the small box from my pocket, the receipts for the venue deposits I'd already made. "These are in my name. I'll handle the cancellations. You won't owe a cent." She glanced at them, then back at me. "So that's it? 3 years, and you walk away like it's nothing?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's not nothing. It's everything. But I'd rather walk away now than spend the rest of my life wondering when your family's next demand would arrive." Her eyes hardened, and she shut the door without another word. Driving home, I expected to feel crushed. And yes, there was grief, a heavy ache in my chest for the future I thought I'd have. But underneath the grief was something else. Freedom. Over the next few weeks, the fallout spread. Her parents called once, leaving a voicemail dripping with venom. "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone as loyal as Claire." Mason sent me a text that simply read, "Weak men die alone." I blocked them both. My own friends, though my real family, rallied around me. They told me I'd dodged a bullet, that if I'd given in once, I'd be giving in forever. And deep down, I knew they were right. One night, I sat on my porch with a beer in hand, looking out at the maple tree my dad and I planted when I was a kid. Its branches were thick now, shading the yard, roots deep and unshakable. I thought about how my dad always said, "Boundaries protect what you value most. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." Claire had tried. Her family had tried. But I didn't bend. And though it cost me the engagement, it gave me something worth far more, the certainty that I'd never again mistake manipulation for love. Because real love doesn't demand you add someone else to your will. Real love doesn't ask you to surrender your boundaries. And walking away from someone who does, that's not failure. That's freedom.